Paramahamsa Parivrajak Acharya Shtota Stata Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gaur Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prem Sekho Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai.
Jai.
Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Jamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Hari Hari
Hari
Bol. Good morning. Welcome. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pachalini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatadine. Srimad Bhagavatam. Welcome, devotees. So we have a verse today that Srila Prabhupada has given a class on, and there's audio lecture of this. And after talking with Mother Soba Radhe about kind of some ideas that we could incorporate into hearing Srila Prabhupada, I was thinking that today we could do somewhat of a hybrid class in relation to hearing Srila Prabhupada and discussing some of the points in this very poignant purport and verse, which explains so many aspects of very perplexing questions that many of us have in this material world in general, but also as we come to Krishna consciousness and start to think about, how did we end up here? How did we end up in the material world? And why are we here in the first place? So we will do a hybrid, listen to Srila Prabhupada, read from his lecture, and also discuss it in this class today, if that is okay with the devotees, unless there's any major objections in regards to that. So we'll go through the beginning and chant the verse. And interestingly enough, if we look on the Veda base and we read the lecture or listen to the lecture, which was given in Tokyo, actually, in 1972, April 23rd, not too far off from where we are right now, 1972 in Tokyo. Prabhupada spends a large amount of time in the beginning of this lecture correcting the devotees on pronunciation. And he really gets into this with them. Now, of course, in the material world, we don't like to take correction on things, especially things that we're not good at. And myself, and well, I'll just speak for myself, Sanskrit is very challenging. So to get we'll say pronunciation of Sanskrit is very challenging. So to try to get the verse right, Prabhupada, we'll see here, if you look at this lecture and listen to the whole thing and read it, you'll see that Prabhupada is very specific about exactly every sound in every single word in the Sanskrit mantras. And he makes a point to say that actually hearing the mantras and pronouncing them correctly gives us a superpower. I'm paraphrasing there, but he says that it's actually the pathway to liberation is pronunciation of the mantras. So Vishnu Gada Prabhu is here, very wonderfully helps us in our pronunciation in Sanskrit, which is very nice. And we can see here that Srila Prabhupada was also very, very dedicated to teaching his students to pronunciate the Sanskrit mantras very perfectly. So with that being said, we will do our best today to recite this verse, and we'll try to do it with the utmost pronunciation, although you will have to please forgive me because my Sanskrit pronunciation is not good, but I will really try my best. So Hare Krishna. We'll start by together chanting this verse. Now, Mother Sobaradhe, do I need to share, or can you share? Or I know that you said you may have to leave.
Yeah, I can share in the beginning, but in the middle of the class, if there's sharing that you need to do, then I've made you co-host. And also, I just wanted to remind you, if you're going to share the audio, make sure you use share sound on the share screen.
Okay.
On the right side, there's an option that says share sound. So just make sure you click on that.
Okay. Jai. Okay. So we'll start here. 1 second. Just let me pull this up properly. Okay. So we'll start by chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, Verse 1. Shri Shuka Uvacha Atmamayam Rite Rajan Padashanu Bhavatmana Naghate Tarta Sambandha Svapna Drashtur Ivangjasa. Shri Shuka Uvacha Atmamayam Rite Rajan Padasyanu Bhavatmanaha Naghate Tarta Sambandha Svapna Drashtur Ivangjasa. Shri Shuka Uvacha Atmamayam Rite Rajan Padashanu Bhavatmana Nagate Tarta Sambandha Svapna Drashtur Ivangjasa. Hare Krishna. Any devotees would like to chant Vishnu Gada Prabhu?
Shri Sukha Uvacha Atmamayam Rite Rajan Parasyanu Bhavatmana Naghate Tarta Sambandha Swapna Drashtur Ivanjasha.
Yeah.
Shri Sukha Uvacha Atmamayam Rite Raja Parasyanubhavatmana Nagate Tartha Sambandha Swapna Drishtir Ivatnaja. Hare Krishna.
Shri Sukha Uvacha Atmamayamrite Rajan Parasyano Bhavatmana Nagate Tartha Sambandha Swapna Drashtur Ivanjasa.
Hare Krishna. Sri Sukha Uvacha Atmamayam Rite Rajan Parashano Bhavatmanaha Naghate Tartha Sambandha Swapna Drashtur Ivanjasha.
Anyone else? Okay. Synonyms. Word for word. Sri Shuka Uvacha. Sri Shuka Goswami said, Atma, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mayam, energy. Rite, without. Rajan, O king. Padasya, of the pure soul. Anubhava Atmanaha, of the purely conscious. Na, never. Gateta, it can so happen. Arta, meaning. Sambandha, relation with the material body. Svapna, dream. Drashtu, of the seer. Eva, like. Anyasa, completely. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Sri Shuka Goswami said, O king, unless one is influenced by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no meaning to the relationship of the pure soul in pure consciousness with the material body. That relationship is just like a dreamer's seeing his own body working. Maharaj Parikshit's question as to how a living entity began his material life. Maharaj Parikshit's question as to how a living entity began his material life, although he is apart from the material body and mind, is perfectly answered. The spirit soul is distinct from the material conception of his life. But he is absorbed in such a material conception because of being influenced by the external energy of the Lord, called Atma Maya. This has already been explained in the first canto in connection with Vyasadev's realization of the Supreme Lord and his external energy. The external energy is controlled by the Lord, and the living entities are controlled by the external energy, by the will of the Lord. Therefore, although the living entity is purely conscious in his pure state, he is subordinate to the will of the Lord in being influenced by the external energy of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 15:15, also, the same thing is confirmed. The Lord is present within the heart of every living entity, and all the living entities' consciousness and forgetfulness are influenced by the Lord. Now, the next question automatically made will be why the Lord influences the living entity to such consciousness and forgetfulness. The answer is that the Lord clearly wishes that every living entity be in his pure consciousness as a part and parcel of the Lord, and thus be engaged in the loving service of the Lord as he is constitutionally made. But because the living entity is partially independent also, he may not be willing to serve the Lord, but may try to become as independent as the Lord is. All the non-devotee living entities are desirous of becoming equally as powerful as the Lord, although they are not fit to become so. The living entities are illusioned by the will of the Lord because they want to become like him. Like a person who thinks of becoming a king without possessing the necessary qualification, when the living entity desires to become the Lord himself, he is put in a condition of dreaming that he is a king. Therefore, the first sinful will of the living entity is to become the Lord. And the consequent will of the Lord is that the living entity forget his factual life and thus dream of the land of utopia, where he may become one like the Lord. The child cries to have the moon from the mother, and the mother gives the child a mirror to satisfy the crying and disturbing child with the reflection of the moon. Similarly, the crying child of the Lord is given over to the reflection, the material world, to lord it over as karmi, and to give this up in frustration to become one with the Lord. Both these stages are dreaming illusions only. There is no necessity of tracing out the history of when the living entity desired this. But the fact is that as soon as he desired it, he was put under the control of Atma Maya by the direction of the Lord. Therefore, the living entity in his material condition is dreaming falsely that this is mine and this is I. The dream is that the conditioned soul thinks of his material body as I, or falsely thinks that he is the Lord, and that everything in connection with the material body is mine. Thus, only in dream does the misconception of I and mine persist life after life. This continues life after life, as long as the living entity is not purely conscious of his identity as the subordinate part and parcel of the Lord. In his pure consciousness, however, there is no such misconceived dream. And in that pure conscious state, the living entity does not forget that he is never the Lord, but that he is eternally the servitor of the Lord in transcendental love. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshulun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadhamayam Tadati Sva Pandantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, before beginning, I would like to ask for blessings and permissions from the devotees and advanced Vaishnavas here in attendance and throughout the whole universe, so that I may speak something in line with Srila Prabhupada and the Parampara. Hare Krishna. So just going back and reading the verse one more time here. Sri Shuka Dev Goswami said, O king, unless one is influenced by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no meaning to the relationship of the pure soul in pure consciousness with the material body. That relationship is just like a dreamer's seeing his own body working. Well, here we have the answer to many philosophical points of existence. And what is being described here in this verse is that, as Srila Prabhupada gives us in the purport, and the verse itself is telling us, there is no meaning to the relationship of the spirit soul and this material world, apart from the spirit soul's relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is Krishna. And that this whole experience that we're undergoing in this material world is like a dream. And in one sense, we have nothing to do. The jiva itself, who we really are, has nothing to do with this material world. And the experience that we have, you and I, when we are experiencing life in these bodies with this consciousness in this so-called material world, is like a dream. We've all had dreams, so we understand the analogy of being asleep, having this experience of something being really real, and experiencing fear and pain and love, sadness, happiness in the dream. And then waking up and being either relieved or sad that the dream wasn't real. So in that same way, which is difficult, at least for myself, to really come to terms with, that this material life that we're experiencing and all of the attachments that we are holding on to, all of the physical attachments, the emotional attachments, the hopes and the dreams and the fears, just like we have in a dream when we're sleeping. This whole material conception that we have is just like that dream, but we are so contaminated due to what is described in this purport by Srila Prabhupada as a misuse of our free will, where our first sinful act was to misuse the free will that we have, that is, in a sense, we've been permitted to have by Krishna. We turned away from Krishna to desire control and domination and lording over, so that we could be like Krishna. It's an envious state. And because of that envy and that desire and misuse of the free will, we are, in a sense, Krishna has provided us a dream, a unreal situation that we can live inside of to try to play out that dream, to try to play out that desire inside of that dream. Now, the issue is that we can never actually play that out because we are not Krishna, but Krishna is giving us, although we are parts and parcel of Krishna, we are not Krishna. So Krishna is giving us this format, this stage to play out the drama, if you will. And actually, we'll look at in a few minutes. I'll read some, and we'll look at the actual transcript of the lecture that Srila Prabhupada gave on this verse in Tokyo in 1972. But before that, it's like, what we're understanding is that actually, like, we are living in a dream state. And Shakespeare actually, Shakespeare had some connection, some kind of Shakti, a kind of perception of things in his play, the seven, or his writing, The 7 Ages of Man. All the world is a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. So in that same way, we are experiencing this stage of life. And what we're getting from Srila Prabhupada, and what we're getting in the direction here, is that actually the only meaning that we can actually get out of this dream, out of this material world, is to reawaken and reconnect our spiritual truth of who we are with Krishna, with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And what we have here in where we are in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is, we have just heard Maharaj Pariksit ask so many questions of Shukadev Goswami. And this chapter, as we're just beginning it, is packed with all of the answers to the most important questions of life, and what the purpose of life is, and what the meaning of life is. And here we have the beginning of those answers. So Srila Prabhupada, as I was mentioning in the beginning here, I don't know, before most of you got on, when Srila Prabhupada gave this lecture in 1972, actually I could share my screen, and we could look at it and read through some of it. The audio on it is not great, so I'm thinking maybe we'll just read through some of it. It's got a lot of hissing in the background, so I think there's some very nice sections of Srila Prabhupada's purport that we could, or of his lecture, that we could read through and maybe have some discussion on. Because actually what this really talks about is the controversial fall of the jiva, which I'm not very well versed on the two sides of it, but there's the one side that we were in the spiritual world and we fell. And then there's the one side that we were not ever in the spiritual world. So anyways, Prabhupada essentially, in this, from what I can see, he establishes his position on this in this lecture and also in this purport. So I can share my screen if it would be helpful, and we can read through some of the verse here, some of the lecture that Srila Prabhupada has. And as I mentioned, this talk from Srila Prabhupada is actually an hour long, because in the beginning of it, he spends about 30 minutes having the devotees recite the verse and making sure that they do really right pronunciation, and explaining to them the importance of the proper pronunciation of Sanskrit mantras. So could I share my screen, or let me see, share screen, desktop, share sounds. So here we are. This is the verse that's was in 1972. It was 1972 in Tokyo. So as we see here, Srila Prabhupada goes through the devotees, Prajumna, they're reciting the verse. Prabhupada makes a point, very important verse. Now we shall go through words and meaning. Again, recite Sri Shuka Uvacha. He's doing it over and over with them. So, Prabhupada here, it is the transliteration, give the long A. You have seen, just try to follow the transliteration. That will be easier. So Prabhupada goes through, here's another piece. He says, you read the transliteration. The thing is, hearing the meter and repeat. That's all. The writing is already there. Transliteration. Simply, you have to hear the written. Just like you have chanted so many verses, songs by hearing, the hearing is very important. A child learns another language simply by hearing pronunciation, hearing. That is natural. If we hear one thing repeatedly, you will learn. You will learn. So one has to hear little attentively. Then it will be easy. You will have no difficulty. Just like you are singing our song in tune, this is by hearing. So simply you have to hear. Therefore, whole Vedic Shastra is called Shruti. It is a process of hearing. So this is interesting. But Prabhupada said he's coughing here and he says, this is the disease of old age. These are the warnings that the body is getting rotten. Go on. So he goes through and you see Prabhupada makes a note. Is that long A or short A? Long A. Yes. Ivan Yasa. So he goes through and he makes sure that the devotees are very much, he also makes the point here. So you have to study like that. So many shlokas. I am taking so much labor. If you do not read it carefully, it is not for that I am making business for selling only and not for my students. You must all read like this, practice. Why so much trouble is being taken? Word to word meaning and then transliteration. If you chant this mantra, that vibration will cleanse the atmosphere. And wherever you go in any part of the world, if you can chant this mantra, oh, you'll be received like God. It is so nice. And in India, he'll actually receive the gods if you chant, receive like gods if you chant this mantra. They will so offer their respects, so many Veda mantra. Next, chant. So he goes through and he so this is I think very instructive for us. And of course, like I said, Vishnu Gadar Prabhu is always, making sure and giving us very precise pronunciation. And so as we get into the verse and the purport in relation to this, here we have it. Prabhupada says in this lecture, in relation to this point, the question of Maharaj Pariksit is perfectly answered as to how a living entity began his material life, although he is apart from the material body and mind. Prabhupada says, it is very important question. Pariksit Maharaj inquired. Many people inquired. So how the living entity was with Krishna, he became fallen in this material world. Is not done, this question is raised. So this question is answered here, that how the living entity who was with Krishna became fallen down in contact with this material qualities. So this is the answer. Read the translation. It is, and so here's Prabhupada. O king, unless one is influenced by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here's Prabhupada. It is simply the influence of the material energy, nothing. Actually, he has not fallen. Another example is given. I don't know if that's right. Just like the moon is covered with scattered clouds, the passing cloud you have seen. Everyone has experienced the cloud passes and it appears that the moon is moving. Have you seen? Yes. Actually, the moon is not moving. It is Maya, illusion. It appears that the moon is moving, but similarly, the living entity, because he is spiritual spark of the Supreme, it has not fallen. It has not fallen. But he is thinking, I am fallen. I am material. That is the reason he is thinking, I am this body. Actually, the body has no connection with me. That is experience that the body has no connection with the soul. The body is changing, dying, but I am the same. The same example, the moon, the cloud is passing over in different way. The moon is far away from the cloud and it has nothing to do with the cloud. But it appears the moon is moving. Try to understand, have questions and answer. It is a very important thing. Atma mayam rate rajan. Except Atma Maya, the illusory energy. It is the maneuvering or handling of the illusory energy of Krishna. This illusory energy develops when we forget Krishna. That's all. It is, in other words, this illusory identification of me with the body is simply due to my forgetfulness. We wanted to forget. We wanted to give up Krishna and wanted to enjoy this material world. Therefore, Krishna is giving us. So now let me try to share a little something in what I can understand from here in relation to what Prabhupada is saying. although he's saying here that it has not fallen, in actuality, we've only fallen because we are thinking we are fallen. In actuality, we have fallen. Well, we were once in the spiritual world. Because in one sense, and in one sense, you kind of like the way this is being described is the soul is spiritual. It never stops being spiritual. Who we are is spiritual. We don't actually have any connection with this physical body. But the only reason we think we do is because we have forgotten Krishna, and Krishna has manufactured a dreamlike material existence for us to live out the drama. But in one sense, we haven't fallen because we're still spiritual. In another sense, we have fallen because we're dreaming that we are away from Krishna. But we're never actually away from Krishna. But ultimately, it's the reason is due to forgetfulness. Now, let me state that I may be off here, but from my understanding, this is what Prabhupada is expressing here, and we'll go on. Just so here's Prabhupada again. Just like when you play some part in a drama, if you feel that I am king, then you can talk very nicely. And if you feel that I am Karandahar, then you cannot play nicely. Is it not? Feeling must be there. If you are playing the part of a king, then you must have the same courage and belief that I am king. You have to forget that you are Karandahar. Then your part will be very nicely played. It will be appreciated. But if you think simultaneously that I am Karandahar, I am playing the part of the king, then you cannot play. So because we wanted to play the part of Krishna, enjoyer, Krishna is giving us a chance that you feel like me. I am king. I am Krishna. I am God. All these rascals, those who are feeling like that, I am master. I am king. I am Krishna. I am God. They're all simply in that feeling only. That's all. And this feeling is created by Krishna. All right. You want to play the part of king? I shall train you in such a way. Just like the director means, dramatic director means he creates a feeling. His direction is nothing but how to feel. So again, here's me speaking. We are feeling this. Krishna is giving this opportunity to us to actually feel it. Because we have to believe it to actually play that part, for us to actually get the experience of wanting to lord it over and be like Krishna. Now, Prabhupada continues to go through and explains this in more detail, giving us deep understanding, talks about where he was actually doing plays. It sounds like he was doing plays when he was a child for Chaitanya Leela, which I can only imagine having that experience of seeing Prabhupada as a child doing Leelas of Chaitanya. Now, here we just, there's a lot of things here, but we just want to come back down to this piece right here. So the answer is, when someone asks you, when one has become in contact with this material nature, he has not become in contact. So we haven't become in contact with the material nature. Here he goes. He is thinking by the influence of the external energy, just like the same example. A man is dreaming. There is no contact with a tiger. Actually, he has no contact with that. Similarly, actually, we are not fallen. We cannot be fallen. But we have created a situation that we are become. That we are. Like, we have created a situation where we are. So this is the interesting thing, because you got both, I think, I'm not sure exactly what the official position is, but I mean, from what we're saying here, there's the side that says we're not fallen, we are fallen. So you could kind of take both sides in this, because Prabhupada's saying, well, you're not fallen, but in a sense you are fallen, but only because we are dreaming that we are. So here we go. But we have created a situation that we are become. Try to understand on this point. It is a very important point. We have simply created a situation. We have not created a situation. Krishna has given us a situation because we wanted to imitate Krishna. So Krishna has given us the opportunity. All right, imitate. You want to be imitation? King in the stage? So feel like this, play like this, do like this. People will applaud. Oh, a very nice king. Very nice. So everyone in this material world, they are playing some part. We're all right. And now I'll speak something. We're all playing this part. This is like, Shakespeare's point. The whole world is but a stage. Everyone's playing the part. I'm a big man. I'm a pauper. I'm a father. I'm a mother. I'm an American. I'm an Indian. Prabhupada's saying it. But as soon as the body is finished, what? All of these are gone. Right here, Prabhupada says, Sarva harash chaham. Chaham. The death means Krishna says, I am death. I take it all away. Everything gone. Now just think of our past life. Suppose I was a king or something like that. From Bhrigu Samhita, it was ascertained. They said, I do not know that I was a big physician in my last life. Very spotless character, no sin like that. He explained, so it may be, but I actually have no remembrance that I was a physician. So what do we know? I might have been a big physician, influential physician, having a good practice, but where is it all? All gone. But now here's the solution, right? Here's the situation. And Prabhupada tells us. So in this situation, our contact with matter is just like a dream. Actually, we are not fallen. Therefore, because we are not fallen at any moment, we can revive our Krishna consciousness. As soon as we understand that I have nothing to do with, I am simply Krishna's servant, eternal servant, that's all. Immediately he becomes liberated. Exactly like that. As soon as sometimes we do that when the fearful dreaming becomes too intolerable, we break the dream. We break the dream, otherwise it becomes intolerable. Similarly, we can break this material connection at any moment as soon as we come to the point of Krishna conscious. Oh, Krishna is my eternal master. I am his servant. That's all. This is the way. Actually, we are not fallen. There cannot be any fallen. The same example, actually, there is no tiger. It is dreaming. Similarly, our fallen condition is also dreaming. We are not fallen. We can simply give up that illusory condition at any moment. Any moment. So if you study all these verses very nicely, you get all this knowledge quickly. Jai. Hare Krishna. I would love to hear any thoughts or any questions, comments, reactions to this verse, any ideas that other devotees might have in relation to what's being expressed here, or of course, any objections or corrections that any devotees may have in attendance today. Would anyone like to make a question or a comment? Specifically in relation to what's being expressed here from Srila Prabhupada and this being fallen and not fallen at the same time. What are some realizations, some thoughts, some ideas that maybe some devotees have in relation to this? Too far out.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
About that point, I don't think I can say anything, but I think only from Prabhupada I have understood how important it is to understand that we are not this body. I think, you understand the scriptures and everything else when you accept that fact. And it's taken so long for me to get to that point that we are not this body, that I and mine. And I've heard it so many times. But unless that point is accepted, all the other information doesn't seem to make sense. I don't know how I went through life without accepting that fact and listening to scriptures, but I think when I don't do much of this, but then when we are distributing books, when we are trying to preach, is it very important to start there to make people understand that we are not this body and that's why we should take this on? Or I don't know if I'm even asking the question properly. I guess in preaching, do you start there? Do you start with, we are not this body, that's why you should take on this process?
Well, I know I've heard Srila Prabhupada say that the fundamental point of spiritual life begins with the fact that we are not this body. And that truth, that fact, it's like there's a big math equation. It's a huge, calculus equation, whatever. You got so many different inputs. And at the very beginning, a basic equation is off. 2 + 2, they have it at 5 instead of 4. And the whole rest of the equation is messed up. So in just like that, society, the world, our understanding, especially here in Kali Yuga, because of the ignorance of the most basic fact of life, that we are not this body, that we continue to have to kind of drive home over and over, even those of us who come into Krishna consciousness, which is described here for the most part, what Srila Prabhupada is saying, like we are so deeply illusioned in the dream, even though we've never fallen spiritually. The soul has nothing to do with this body. Who we really are has nothing to do with this. But because we're so deeply ingrained in this dream and this illusion, it's hard for us to break that identity. But breaking that identity is the foundational principle that gets us out of the material world. So, I mean, your question about, do we start there? I think Srila Prabhupada he made the point in many scenarios that this basic principle of spiritual life, and Krishna also explains it in the 2nd chapter to Arjuna. So I think we could start there, of course, because by starting there, it gives a foundation to build upon. Because as you mentioned, we can't really go anywhere in spiritual life. Everything on top of, we're not this physical body, we are a spirit soul that has an eternal relationship with Krishna. Nothing else fits until that part of the equation is at least established. So that seems to be a good place to start with preaching if we're beginning with someone. And so that would be my answer there. Hopefully that's helpful in some way.
Yes, it is cool.
Hare Krishna. So yeah, I mean, one thing I find very, from my own experience of coming to Krishna consciousness, I think what actually brought me into the movement and being able to read Srila Prabhupada's books, like I had come in contact with devotees. I had read Srila Prabhupada's books even when I was very young. Like I had come in contact with them when I was like 10 years old, and I was reading them and trying to understand the philosophy. And then later in life, I ran into like traveling Sankirtan devotees and took prasadam and things like that. But I never was able to accept the philosophy. But then I was at a point later in life where, like it says here in Srila Prabhupada's lecture, where he says exactly like that, as soon as you sometimes do that, when a fearful dreaming becomes too much intolerable, we break the dream. And for me, like when I came to Krishna consciousness, it was very much like my material life had become so intolerable that I had to break the dream. Something had to give. And that's when Srila Prabhupada's books, and they appeared into my life again through the mercy of devotees. And they lit a fire, like the dream in one sense. I'm still dreaming, I'm still an illusion, but at least the heavy dream of complete materialism, like there was a crack in the ice. And I was able to accept the philosophy, but it was really because I had just become come to a point in my material life that the dream was so intolerable and I had to find a solution. So I find this to be very inspiring, and that Srila Prabhupada is describing my experience of what it has been like for me in the material world, so I can check that against, like, okay, this makes sense, because even though I can't trust my senses and my imperfect mind to make assessments and speculate about it, but when I hear a pure devotee explaining the same experience that I had in my own heart and my own mind, it gives me faith and inspiration to keep going on the path. And in this verse, it's like there's like the two sides of it, where, you know, ultimately Srila Prabhupada says that, did the jiva fall, or did the jiva not fall? Those of us who have been around the movement long enough, maybe we've heard this controversy, if you want to even call it that. But it's hard, because Prabhupada's saying we're not fallen, but in the same time we are, because if we're forgetfulness of Krishna, that would mean that we have had the experience of Krishna. You can't forget something that you never knew. It would just mean that we were always in ignorance. But what's being expressed here is we're only not fallen because we aren't fallen now. The soul is still connected to Krishna. It's a dream that we're in. There's a description of this that Prabhupada gives in relation to where the fall happened. How did we end up in this material world? And I'll paraphrase it, but it was like there was two sages trying to describe there was a parrot that landed on a tree, and as the parrot landed on the tree, it was a mango tree. As the parrot landed on the mango tree, the mango fell. And the two pundits were then arguing back and forth with each other. Did the mango fall on its own, or did the mango fall because the parrot landed in the tree, because it happened at the same time? And Prabhupada gave it's similar description of that in relation to, did we fall? Did we not fall? Ultimately, was it because the parrot landed? Was it because it fell? There's no real answer to it, but the answer, and again, if we can get caught up in the idea of trying to understand where we came from, this and that, ultimately, and this is another way Prabhupada explained it, if we're drowning in the ocean, which in the material world, we're drowning in this ocean, and someone throws us a life preserver, are we going to be concerned on where that life preserver came from? How it ended up there? Not at all. If we're in a burning house and someone puts a ladder up to the top floor that we're on, and someone is standing there at the top of the ladder trying to get us out of that house, are we going to ask, where did you come from? How did I end up here? You're just going to move and get out. So in the same way, we know we're in a situation that the clock is ticking. Our mortality we're faced with the mortality of this body, birth, death, old age, and disease. And we have a chance to get out. We have a life preserver. That's the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, and the teachings of Krishna through the Parampara and Srila Prabhupada. And if we take that, we have clear direction and a simple process for getting out. Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Hare Nam Eva Kevalam. Uncovering our actual true self and breaking through the illusion of the dream in this material world. So, Hare Krishna, that's what I have to say for today. If anyone else has any thoughts or anything that they would like to mention, if not, we can end the class here. Just trying to think if there's anything. So
thank you, Śaśi-śekhara.
Hare Krishna.
This is very, this is very clear. The examples that you brought up and the references you brought up were very good. Thank you for that.
Jai. Hare
Yeah,
Krishna.
a lot of it, I believe, you know, as you were talking, you know, are we fallen? Are we not fallen? Having the understanding of the clarity between, I guess, the terminology of fallen and how we define fallen and who is fallen and where are we fallen to. Like, you have to answer kind of all those questions in order to quite, you know, understand the terms. So you just don't get kind of caught up in it and in this. She'll probably, to me, that was my takeaway from this, is to better understand this terminology of fallen, so that we don't just simply just make a blanket statement. You know, one thing I can definitely say is we're not properly, currently in our current condition, we're not properly situated. So the opposite of fallen would be well situated or standing or in the right, not in a helpless position. So where we are situated in this illusion, this dream, you know, in this material experience, we're not well situated or properly situated. We can only be properly situated in pure devotional service. And then also we're not in control of coming out of this. We're not completely in control of coming out of this illusion. Even if we desire to do so, Krishna himself has to it's his external energy, it's his material energy that we're currently undergoing. Krishna has placed us here, and Krishna has to remove us from this. So we're still dependent on Krishna in every step. So I was thinking of another just way to look at fallen is that we're not in complete control. We're dependent at all stages. We're dependent on Krishna, whether to come into this, to have this dream-like state, this illusory-like condition, or even to come out of this illusory condition. Krishna is in control of this experience,
right,
by giving us the opportunity and taking it away.
Yeah, that's right. Krishna's, and so actually right here, this last piece, it reminds me of what you're saying. So there's, you know, the devotees are asking Prabhupada, so if when we realize Krishna, when we have no more desires, then how can we desire? Prabhupada says, you create desire. If you simply keep this contact with Krishna, then there is no more any other desire than to serve Krishna. That's all. This feeling that, and then Trivikram Swami now, this feeling that we have that we are fallen, that we are very fallen, Prabhupada, that is also an illusion. That is also illusion. You are fallen means you have got some certain desires except service of Krishna. Therefore, the conclusion is that if you keep yourself tightly in Krishna's service, there is no question of falling down, or there's no question of Maya, you see. So, I mean, we can speculate and contemplate everything else, but it's like so clear as we just keep our focus, have our desires on the service of Krishna, and then there's no question of being fallen. So thank you, Dronacharya Prabhu. Okay. Vanchakopa Trupyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha. Hare Krishna. Thank you, devotees.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.